Welcome to Walking by Faith, a podcast from Torch Trust where we talk to blind and partially sighted people about how their lived experience of being visually impaired has impacted their faith and spiritual lives. I'm your host, Lynn Davis.
I'm Berni Warren and I have sight loss, and I live in Surrey. And my sight loss is related to my condition called diabetes. I have type 1 diabetes, and I've had sight loss for quite a while now. And my time is spent with helping healthcare professionals and students in a variety of settings to learn about what sight loss is like when living with another condition. And it's something I've really enjoyed doing, actually. And I'm part of NICE, National Institute of Clinical Health and Excellence. And I do some work with them, and I do some work with pharmaceutical companies. And also I'm part of the Royal College of Ophthalmology as a lay member, which I really enjoy. Adapting to sight loss was a bit of a challenge, particularly as it was so unexpected. I wasn't expecting it at all. And unfortunately for me, I lost my job really quickly. A year after being diagnosed, my job was lost, really, because I just no longer could do it. So I was a teacher of very young children, and having to adapt and think what I was going to do next was actually, it was pretty hard. I hadn't got a plan B, so I literally didn't know what else to do at that time of my life. So that was a real challenge.
When and how did you become a Christian?
So I became a Christian when I was about 17 or 18. So I was at boarding school at the time. And I always knew there was a God and Jesus. And I was brought up in a family which had faith, which I'm really grateful for. And when I was at boarding school, as I say, 17, 18, I think I've got an identical twin. And I don't think she was particularly well at this time for some reason. And I knew about giving my life to Jesus, and I went down to my boarding school where they had the organ room, and I just knelt down at the altar and said, Lord, just come into my life. I don't know what that means even, but Lord, I know I want you to have my life, have it as yours. And I felt completely different. Wow. I felt like I could have floated up to my dormitory, because I knew something amazing had happened. But to be honest with you, I wasn't quite sure, but I knew God had really come into my life at that moment.
How has your faith been impacted by your unique lived experience of being visually impaired?
Well, I think for me, because it was so unexpected, I have had to really trust in God. And when I gave my life to Jesus back when I was 17, 18, I really felt I gave my whole life to him. So I really trusted in him with what he was going to do with my life. A bit like when you give a present to someone, you give them the whole present. You don't give half of it, you give all of it, and you trust them to look after that and do with it what you would like, you to do if you were having that present yourself. And I just had to really trust in God then, more than I ever had, because I knew that he had the best in store for me. And it was going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, because I had to have some very evasive treatment. But I think it strengthened my faith, because I literally didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I knew that God had good plans for me. So when having God in your life, and Jesus in my life, I really believe there's no longer coincidences. I believe that God is with me every second of the day. And I really believe in God incidences. And one example was I was invited to speak at a conference, a really large conference, diabetes conference, professional conference, this year in April in Excel. And it's a massive building, and thousands of people go there. And before I went, I looked at the program, and there was a lady there who was speaking from lived experience, like I was, who was speaking on a topic about stigma. And I'll say her name was Jane Smith. And I really wanted to speak to this Jane Smith, because I wanted to see what she was saying was similar to what I was saying. The fortunate thing was that she would be there, but the unfortunate thing was she would be speaking at exactly the same time that I was speaking, but in a different room. So I wouldn't get to speak to her and find out what she was thinking. So I tried to reach out to her. I couldn't reach out to her at all. And so I sort of put it aside. And that was it. So I went to the conference and I was speaking on the Thursday at 2:40, and this was the Wednesday. I went into the massive exhibition hall, thousands of people there. Went and sat down, had my lunch. And there were a couple of people sitting nearby and spoke to them. They were healthcare professionals. And then another lady came and sat opposite me, literally where the coffee table was between us. And she had a badge around her neck. I don't know who she was. I didn't know who she was, couldn't read it. We started talking as you do, brought her into the conversation. I said, "Oh, I'm speaking." She said, "Oh, I'm speaking too." I said, "Oh my gosh, when are you speaking?" She said, "I'm speaking tomorrow at 2:40." And I said, "Oh, what are you speaking on?" She said, "Stigma." And I said, "You're not Jane Smith, are you?" And she went, "Yes, I am." And I went, "Oh my word, you're exactly the person I wanted to speak to about stigma, because I'm speaking tomorrow the same thing." And honestly, there were so many people there. It could not have been a coincidence that she literally came and sat opposite me. And we were able to speak about stigma and diabetes and how that affects us. Um, I was just praising Jesus all the time. And she said she's never met anyone so enthusiastic to meet her apart from her family. So, but I know that was God. That was a God incident. No way was that a coincidence.
How has being visually impaired impacted your experience of church?
So I have struggled with church because sometimes accessibility is really hard. I have been to a church whereby they have really tried. So they've sent me things early, etc., such as the words of the songs and that sort of thing. But you know what? It really has been difficult. Um, Physically getting there is hard. So if I'm not with my husband, because my husband's a sound engineer and he has to often go away on tour, like he's on tour at the moment. So actually have to find a church that I can actually get to without a car, unless I can have people taking me. So that has been a little bit challenging. Um, but often I'm asking God, please, can we have songs today that I know? Because some of them I know anyway. And, God can do anything, can't he? So, there'll be often times I go to a new church, for example, and there will be songs that I know. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. I know this song. I don't need any words to be seen because I know it anyway. So, yeah, I think, God can so often answer prayers, even the tiniest prayers he wants to hear and he can answer.
Who has supported you through your faith journey?
I've had a lot of help and support from people. My husband and my family have been great, but also I do have a group of ladies that I meet for Bible study, and they've been great. We're looking at Acts at the moment, so we've gone through Luke, and we're now at Acts of the Apostles, and outside the family, they've been such a lovely group of ladies because we just share things together and we read the Bible together, and yeah, they've just been really spurred me on and really encouraged me. And just hearing how God's working in their lives has been, I don't know, it's really strengthened my faith actually. So it's been really, yeah, really helpful.
How has your unique lived experience impacted how you see and experience God and God's love?
I purposely try and have my ears and eyes open to to God and see Him in everything that I'm doing. And I think that's important to think that He can, know that He's with us all the time. And I think that's really helped in many situations. The scary situations when you're having eye treatment, which can be really evasive and scary, and you're not sure what the outcome is going to be. But you know that God can be there to help in so many different situations. I think I think overall trust is has got to be so important, and I think that's what I have to do, even when there are situations where, yeah, I'm really worried. Um, I trust that God is going to do the best, and He does the best job for me. My when I get upset, right? If in the past I used to get upset that I lost my job and I lost my driving license, but then I think actually I've given my life to Jesus, and He's got the best in store for me. So this is what I'm doing now, is what God wants me to do. So I think I just have to trust in Him in everything that I'm doing.
What does walking by faith mean to you?
Walking by faith means literally every step I take, I believe that Jesus is by my side. And whatever happens within my life, it is knowing that Jesus is already there. He is already at that place. So whatever it is that I'm facing, whether it's good or bad, Jesus is already beside me there at that place. And I think that's been really important to me. Faith have been absolutely pivotal to my life, because I lost my sight so quickly that I just didn't even know what was going to happen with my life. But having faith, walking with it by faith, meant that I didn't have to panic and worry anymore. I could just rest in the peace that Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. I think in my last Torch interview many years ago now, I said it didn't matter that I didn't know what God was doing in my life. That doesn't matter. What really matters is God knows what he's doing in my life. That's what really matters. And I think that what faith is about trusting that God knows exactly what he's doing. So that's what, to me, walking by faith is about.
Finally, do you have any wellness tip for our listeners, something that has helped you on your faith journey and might help them on theirs?
Well, with my ladies, we have a WhatsApp group, but we also have a prayers and answered prayers group. So it's part of that group. But what it does is that every time we have a prayer request, we can put it in that group, and people get a ping straight away, and we can pray straight away for that request. And then afterwards, we put the answered bit in. And so I've had appointments where I've been really, really worried, and I've wanted particular doctors to see me, etc. And God's answered that prayer, and it's been fantastic. And whenever we're thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder if God can do this or that, if I pray for this, we look back as well. We can look back through that WhatsApp group and see the amount of prayers that God's answered and how he's answered them. And that's really stirred, I think, our faith and helped us realize that prayer is such a powerful weapon against things that sometimes can go really wrong within our lives. If you have worries in your life, it doesn't matter how big your faith is, just trust in God. Get down on knees. I often get down on my knees and I just say, Lord, please be in this situation, because God just loves us to depend on him. He's our father, right? And like fathers love their children to depend on them and come to them with, requests and prayers and things. And God's just like that. He loves it if we trust in him and pray to him and communicate with him. I often have a breakfast with Jesus. So I'll sit at breakfast table, especially if I'm on my own, my husband's away working. And I sit down with my bowl of cereal and I get a chair, I pull it out and I say, come on, Jesus, come and sit beside me. And we have, and I might sound a bit crazy to some people, but it's a really special time where I can just pretend Jesus is right beside me. And I just talk about my day and things like that. And I don't know, it just helps me feel really close to God, that he is there with me. So I would say if there's anything that you're finding difficult, invite Jesus to come and sit next to you and just chat stuff through, because he loves to be involved with our lives.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Walking by Faith. If you'd like to get in touch about anything you've heard on the podcast, or if you'd like to leave any comments or feedback, you may do so by phoning 01858 438 260 or by emailing info@torchtrust.org. We'll be back soon, but until then, from me, Lynn Davis, goodbye for now, and thanks for listening.